This video isn't about judging women, it's about judging standards. Because the truth is, the quality of your relationships will never rise above what you're willing to accept. What I'm about to share isn't theory or fantasy. It's a practical breakdown of 5 essential qualities a woman must bring consistently for a relationship to be healthy, balanced, and genuinely worth committing to. These are the differences between a partnership that strengthens your life and one that slowly erodes your energy, peace, and sense of self. Most men aren't struggling because they lack options. They struggle because they lack filters. Without filters, you remain in dynamics that feel manageable at first, but quietly drain you over time. If you've ever wondered why effort alone couldn't fix your relationship, or why you felt worse the longer you stayed, these 5 things will expose the uncomfortable truth. Before we go further, there's an important distinction to make. When I say a woman is useless, I'm not talking about her worth as a human being. That's never the conversation. Human value is inherent. It cannot be earned or taken away. Relationship value, on the other hand, is conditional. Confusing the two is exactly how men end up tolerating situations that erode them quietly. A woman can be smart, attractive, kind, even deeply loving, and still be useless for you. Not because she's flawed, not because she's malicious, but because what she brings into your life doesn't translate into stability, strength, or peace. Most men make the same mistake. They ask the wrong questions. They ask, does she love me? Does she care? Is she a good woman? Rarely do they ask the question that matters most. What is this relationship actually turning me into? That's uncomfortable because it forces honesty about yourself, not her. Look carefully. Since she entered your life, are you more grounded or more anxious? Are you clearer, more decisive, more disciplined, or constantly second-guessing yourself, explaining, adjusting, and apologizing? Do you feel respected in your silence or only tolerated when you're useful? That shift in perspective, judging standards instead of intentions, is what most men avoid. Intentions are easy to excuse, standards are not. A relationship should never require you to shrink your instincts, dull your boundaries, or compromise your self-respect just to maintain peace. If it does, no matter how much affection exists, it's costing you more than it gives. This lens isn't about moral judgment, bitterness, or resentment. It's about clarity. It's about recognizing dynamics that silently dismantle the man inside the relationship. Once you see that distinction, evaluating the 5 things that determine whether a woman adds to your life or slowly drains it becomes straightforward. The first and most critical quality is loyalty, not the superficial kind that appears convenient or only exists in the absence of cheating. I'm talking about loyalty that creates emotional safety, the kind that allows a man to invest deeply without feeling like he's walking on shifting ground. Here's an uncomfortable truth. Men take the bigger emotional risk in relationships. Every hour, resource, plan, or future vision you invest increases your vulnerability. This isn't weakness, it's math. Real loyalty isn't about staying faithful in name only. It's about not forcing you to stay alert, not making you feel constantly evaluated, compared, or replaceable. A loyal woman keeps both feet firmly in the relationship. She doesn't subtly remind you that better options are everywhere or treat your presence as provisional, contingent on your performance or utility. Watch the small signs. Does she create steadiness, or do you constantly feel like you need to reinforce your position? Does she protect the relationship, or does she test it for leverage? Do you feel chosen or merely tolerated until something more exciting appears? Men often ignore these questions because the answers are uncomfortable. Loyalty is structural, not romantic. It's what allows everything else to function without constant reassurance. Without it, even the best qualities crumble under pressure. The second essential is sexual polarity. This is the invisible force that determines whether attraction deepens or evaporates over time. Sexual polarity isn't about dominance, control, or outdated gender roles. It's the magnetic tension created by difference, masculine direction paired with feminine responsiveness. This contrast is what fuels desire. Remove it, and attraction doesn't slowly fade. it collapses entirely. Many men confuse emotional closeness with sexual desire, thinking that shared feelings automatically maintain attraction. They don't. Desire thrives on difference, on the dynamic interplay between a man leading and a woman responding with energy, passion, and receptivity. A relationship can be comfortable and emotionally warm, yet completely lacking in sexual tension. That's a slow death for attraction, often unnoticed until it's too late. Understanding polarity is about seeing relationships as living, moving dynamics, not static arrangements. It's about recognizing that intimacy is more than affection. It's a continual, energetic exchange that keeps desire alive. Number 3, emotional availability. A woman who is emotionally accessible doesn't shut you out when things get difficult, doesn't make you navigate her moods like a minefield, and doesn't demand constant decoding to understand her feelings. Emotional availability creates connection, not confusion. It allows for honest expression, compromise, and growth without manipulation. If she's consistently closed off, dismissive, or reactive in ways that destabilize your emotional state, it doesn't matter how attractive or accomplished she is. She's eroding the very foundation of partnership. A healthy relationship requires emotional transparency, the ability to communicate needs, fears, and desires openly while remaining accountable. The fourth quality is respect. Not respect in theory or when convenient, but the kind that's embedded in her actions, words, and presence. Respect acknowledges boundaries, celebrates individuality, and validates your worth as a partner. Without it, everything becomes conditional. Every interaction carries an undercurrent of judgment, testing, or subtle diminishment. Respect is what allows trust to grow. It's what makes you feel secure, understood, and valued, even when no one is watching. Finally, the fifth is consistency. Love, loyalty, respect, attraction. These qualities mean little if they fluctuate unpredictably. Consistency isn't about perfection, it's about reliability. It's the quiet assurance that you don't have to brace for emotional whiplash, overanalyze motives, or constantly defend your position. A consistent partner provides a steady foundation, one that allows a relationship to expand, deepen, and strengthen without constant fear or doubt. Without it, every investment you make becomes tentative, every hope fragile. When you evaluate a relationship through these 5 pillars, loyalty, sexual polarity, emotional availability, respect, and consistency, you gain clarity. You see whether a woman adds value to your life or quietly drains it. You recognize patterns, set boundaries, and stop tolerating dynamics that slowly erode your peace. This isn't about rejecting women. It's about refusing to accept relationships that undermine you. It's about cultivating partnerships that elevate your life instead of quietly depleting it. And when you can see that difference clearly, everything else falls into place, naturally, inevitably. It's a trap most men fall into without realizing it. They assume that if there's harmony, shared routines, and a sense of understanding, desire will simply take care of itself. It won't. Comfort and attraction are not opposites. They can coexist, but they are not the same thing either. When a relationship slides into predictable peace, free from friction, conflict, or drama, something subtle begins to die, the tension that fuels desire. What replaces attraction isn't resentment or hatred, it's neutrality. You are no longer desired, you are tolerated. You become the reliable presence, the safe option, the man who is useful, emotionally available, familiar, but no longer capable of sparking fire. This is the stage where men start feeling invisible inside their own relationships. She still talks to you, she still depends on you, but the energy has changed. When polarity disappears, the dynamic shifts. The feminine stops responding the way she once did. She begins managing, evaluating, and even leading emotionally. And here's the hard truth. Desire cannot be repaired with conversations, promises, or effort. When attraction fades, it doesn't get negotiated back into existence. It gets outsourced. It manifests in fantasy, in attention from others, or in someone who reintroduces contrast, the difference that naturally creates spark. This is not about blaming women, it's about understanding nature. Attraction is like fire. It needs oxygen, it thrives on tension, And it cannot be manufactured by compliance or effort. You cannot explain desire into being. You cannot negotiate it. You cannot manufacture it by being more agreeable, more accommodating, or more available. Once polarity dies, desire doesn't return. It is replaced. And when that happens, even if you're physically present, the relationship has already begun its shift into something colder, flatter, and far more dangerous to your sense of self. From here, everything begins to revolve around respect. This is where relationships either flourish or quietly collapse. Notice something important. Love hasn't been mentioned as a requirement. That's intentional. Love is emotional. Respect is evaluative. Emotions fluctuate, but evaluation drives behavior. A woman can love you deeply and still undermine you. She can feel connected and caring and still perceive you as less than equal in strength or position. Respect dictates how she speaks to you, whether she listens, whether she honors your boundaries or tests them. When respect exists, loyalty feels natural, polarity remains alive, and trust doesn't demand constant reinforcement. But when respect erodes, the shift is subtle. Her voice changes. Her words become sharper, more calculated. Small dismissals creep in under the guise of humor, honesty, or casual observation. She begins testing not playfully, but strategically. Your decisions are questioned, your standards negotiated. Your silence is no longer interpreted as confidence, but as weakness. Most men overlook this because the change isn't dramatic. There's no explosion, no visible betrayal, just a quiet repositioning where she stops responding to you and starts managing you. This is the turning point. Without respect, loyalty becomes conditional. She may still be present physically, but her commitment is rooted in convenience, not admiration. Sexual polarity collapses because desire cannot exist without trust and respect. What replaces it is vigilance. You feel it in your body long before you can articulate it. A tightness, a restlessness, an instinctive tension that makes relaxation impossible. You find yourself explaining instead of leading, adjusting instead of standing firm, monitoring instead of trusting. Most men resist acknowledging this because it's painful, but the moment respect disappears, the relationship is already over. You are just still participating. From that moment, you are no longer building together. You are negotiating decline, attempting to reclaim ground that cannot be regained through effort, affection, or sacrifice. Respect does not return when you try harder or prove your love. It only exists when your presence elevates the relationship, when your absence would be felt not merely as a loss of comfort, but as a loss of strength. Respect is not one requirement among many. It is the axis around which every other quality rotates. Lose it, and the structure doesn't wobble, it collapses. Next comes trust and honesty, the quiet pillars of any functioning partnership. Not the performative kind people often claim because it sounds virtuous, but the kind that allows a man to fully relax inside the relationship. Real trust isn't telling yourself, I choose to believe her. That's self-soothing, not trust. Actual trust emerges when your mind isn't constantly filling in gaps, when you're not monitoring tone, timing, or inconsistencies. It exists when words and actions align so consistently that your nervous system can finally let go of tension. Honesty is what generates this clarity, and clarity is what produces trust. But honesty isn't about speaking everything that crosses the mind. That's impulse, not maturity. True honesty is coherent. It means what is said today does not contradict what was said yesterday. It means explanations don't shift to suit convenience. It means you're not left decoding subtext or guessing which version of reality applies. Where trust is absent, the impact is physical before it is intellectual. You feel it in the chest, a low-level unease, a tension you can't name but can't ignore. Living in this fog, half-truths, mixed signals, conversations that circle without resolution, is exhausting. Men often mistake this tension for passion or mystery. It is neither. It is instability, and over time it erodes presence. You stop being fully engaged, not because you don't care, but because part of you is always bracing for impact. A relationship that costs your mental peace is never neutral. It consumes your energy quietly, steadily, until your investment outweighs your sense of security and self-respect. And here's the reality. Without loyalty, polarity, respect, and trust, a relationship cannot thrive. Comfort alone will not sustain desire. Love alone will not guarantee safety or alignment. What sustains a partnership, what makes it feel vital and alive, is the combination of these qualities functioning together. Loyalty that creates safety, polarity that maintains attraction, respect that underpins every interaction, and trust that allows presence without tension. Missing even one element quietly undermines the rest, and the longer it goes unnoticed, the deeper the erosion. Recognizing these patterns is not about judging women. It is about assessing the health of your dynamics, your standards, and ultimately, your own life. When you evaluate a relationship through this lens, clarity emerges. You see which elements are present, which are absent, and whether the overall balance strengthens you or diminishes you. You stop tolerating dynamics that quietly dismantle your presence, and you begin cultivating partnerships that elevate your life rather than slowly depleting it. Understanding this isn't optional, it is essential. Without it, men continue to invest in what is familiar rather than what is truly sustaining, confusing stability with fulfillment, comfort with desire, and habit with genuine connection. But once the framework is understood, everything else aligns naturally. You can navigate relationships with discernment, with boundaries, and with the clarity to invest where it actually matters, and withdraw where it silently undermines you. But there's one final truth most men overlook. Peace is not a luxury in a relationship. It's foundational. Without it, even the strongest men become reactive, distracted, and diminished. The question isn't simply whether you trust her enough to stay. The deeper question is this: does this relationship allow you to live without constant internal noise? Real peace, the kind that allows you to think clearly, act decisively, and remain grounded under pressure, is the currency of a healthy partnership. When it's missing, everything else becomes heavier, more complicated, and subtly corrosive. And that brings us to the last essential pillar: nurturing support. This quality is widely misunderstood, so pay close attention. Support doesn't mean catering to your every whim. It doesn't mean agreeing with everything you say or sacrificing her own well-being to make you comfortable. Real support is far simpler and far rarer than most men realize. A man's life is already demanding. He carries responsibilities, expectations, pressure, and decisions that rarely come with applause. Most men don't hear "thank you for bearing the weight." They hear silence, or they are simply told to handle it. And that's the baseline. So when a man chooses to share his life with a woman, the question becomes unmistakably clear. Does she reduce the load or quietly add to it? A supportive partner doesn't transform your fatigue into criticism. She doesn't interpret your need for space as rejection. She doesn't turn your exhaustion into her own insecurity. Instead, she understands something essential about masculine psychology. Men recover through space, respect, and restoration, not constant discussion. Support is shown in her response when you're under pressure. Does she become an additional battlefield or a place where your guard can finally come down? Does she compete with your responsibilities or acknowledge them as part of who you are? This isn't about softness. It's about not being corrosive. A woman who truly supports you doesn't drain your energy through emotional volatility, unnecessary conflict, or guilt masquerading as intimacy. She doesn't require you to fragment yourself just to keep the relationship stable. Here's the quiet, undeniable truth. If being with her leaves you more depleted than being alone, the relationship is not nourishing you. It's extracting from you. Attraction cannot compensate for exhaustion, and affection cannot replace restoration. No matter how beautiful she is or how strong the emotional bond feels, a relationship that consistently leaves you worn down will eventually hollow you out. Support isn't measured in words, it's measured in what happens to your energy over time. If you are steadily losing clarity, strength, and emotional bandwidth, that is not love maturing. That is imbalance revealing itself, and imbalance always collects a price. What matters now is not memorizing a checklist, it's recognizing a pattern. Loyalty, polarity, respect, trust, and support do not function in isolation. They move as a system. When one begins to falter, the others rarely remain intact. That's why focusing on individual behaviors keeps men stuck. You argue about tone instead of addressing respect. You debate honesty instead of trust. You negotiate space instead of confronting the lack of support. Meanwhile, the trajectory of the relationship continues, quietly, inexorably. Healthy dynamics don't require constant interpretation. You don't need to decode moods or read between lines. The pattern is evident, stabilizing, and felt in how you show up, how you think, and how much energy remains at the end of the day. Unhealthy dynamics do the opposite. One moment you feel chosen, the next you feel evaluated, one moment confident, the next second guessing yourself just to keep things calm. That inconsistency is diagnostic, not random. And this is where responsibility comes back to you. Not as blame, but as power. This isn't about labeling women as good or bad. It's about recognizing when a dynamic no longer aligns with the man you are striving to become. Standards aren't punishments, they are filters. They clarify, protect, and prevent overinvestment in situations that quietly erode your peace and presence. If you consistently feel less grounded, less respected, and less alive than before the relationship, that's not something to push through. It's something to acknowledge. The quality of your relationships will never rise above the standards you enforce, not the standards you talk about or hope for, but the ones you actually live by. Once you see the pattern clearly, the decision becomes simpler, not easier, but undeniably clearer. Clarity restores control. Strip it down, and what you're really evaluating isn't a list of demands, it's a filter. 5 conditions that determine whether a relationship strengthens you or quietly dismantles you from the inside out. Loyalty, because no man can build on unstable ground. Polarity, because desire cannot survive neutrality. Respect, because without it, everything else becomes performative. Trust and honesty, because peace is not optional, it's essential. And nurturing support, because a partnership should never leave you more depleted than being alone. You don't need many women in your life. You need the right dynamic with the right one. Anything else is noise, distraction, or emotional debt that compounds over time. The mistake most men make isn't choosing the wrong woman. It's negotiating with red flags once they appear. It's romanticizing imbalance because walking away feels harder than adjusting yourself again and again, over and over. Recognizing these 5 pillars and how they operate together isn't about perfection, control, or judgment. It's about clarity, alignment, and protection. It's about cultivating relationships that elevate your life instead of quietly depleting it. It's about seeing the patterns clearly, honoring your standards, and refusing to settle for dynamics that undermine your sense of self. When loyalty, polarity, respect, trust, and support exist simultaneously, a relationship feels expansive rather than draining. It feels stabilizing rather than chaotic. It strengthens rather than diminishes. And when you learn to identify these dynamics early, you don't just survive relationships, you thrive in them. Ultimately, this is about more than choosing the right partner. It's about knowing what kind of partnership strengthens you and having the courage to walk away from everything that quietly steals your peace, energy, and sense of self. When you do, you step into a space where connection isn't compromise, it's alignment. Where love doesn't erode, it builds. Where desire, respect, and support coexist naturally, and where your life is elevated instead of diminished. That clarity, that discernment, is the real measure of a healthy relationship. And here's the shift that changes everything. You don't set standards to control someone else. You set them to protect who you are becoming. A relationship that asks you to abandon your instincts, silence your discomfort, or accept less respect than you would give yourself isn't growth. It's quiet erosion, and erosion doesn't announce itself. It happens in the spaces where tolerance replaces discernment. The moment you stop tolerating what costs you clarity, strength, and peace is the moment you regain control over your life and your choices. If this conversation has given language to something you felt but couldn't articulate, stay here. Subscribe. Hidden Waters exists for men who are done guessing and ready to see the dynamics clearly. If you've ever endured more than you should have, press like, not for validation, but as acknowledgement. If you recognize a pattern you once ignored, leave a comment. Awareness is where every real shift begins. This isn't about women, isn't? It's about standards, and standards change everything.